Meeting for November the 28th. I need a motion to amend the agenda.
So moved.
We have a first by Mr. Lawrence, a second by Mr. Tisdale. All in favor? 5-0. Ms. Newman and Mr. Gines aren't present.
To the consent agenda, we're adding Resolution 5N, resolution authorizing City of Biloxi to declare Christmas ornaments and decorations surplus and make a donation to the City of Marks, Mississippi.
Motion.
I make the motion to accept the agenda as amended.
I second it.
We have a motion by Mr. Lawrence, a second by Mr. Tisdale. Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0. We'll now move to our presentation agenda. Mr. Gillich.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to welcome, especially our young people here today. You know, everybody from Biloxi High, good way to get up the afternoon off, right? So thank you, and I know we're looking at our youth council and some things up for next week, and so we want to welcome you here today. And George said he would answer any questions you might have about city government.
That's right. We'll take care of it.
In his 30 seconds. So I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. Now we're back to work, trying to finish the year and start the new year. So welcome to City Council, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Well, we don't have any departmental reports, so we'll now move to our council reports. Mr. Lawrence, 30 seconds.
30 seconds to start with. We got a couple of things. We got the Christmas parade this Friday. That's for the kids. And normally the Biloxi High Band marches in the parade, leads our parade, which is a good thing. Then we had the boat parade on Saturday, Christmas on the water. And then we also have downtown Saturday, is good for Christmas downtown, so it's good for the city. A couple of things, though. I was going to check on the metal ornaments that we had made. Do we still have them to put up, or is that some of the stuff you selling?
Sherry's here.
The big ones we use it.
Big ornaments, I think we've got some of them installed.
Right. Well, I know they had the huge balls you used to hang them in a tree. They all look pretty good. Yeah, because I think it's time to decorate our city up a little more. I don't know, do we have much more decoration to put up? Like downtown, I know we only have 3 strings down there, so I don't know if you're going to have added downtown lights or not. Because we're trying to light up downtown Biloxi, too. You know, because, I mean, that's amazing. We're working hard to get people to go downtown, so, I mean, we definitely ought to be decorated. So thank you. A couple of things I had, Chief Miller, they had some problems in Kensington with some speeding. Everybody going back through there, and they're getting lost coming out of there. And they naturally brought up the speed bumps again. So I don't know if they could put up speed bumps, or the city wants to allow speed bumps, or we don't want to do speed bumps back on Kensington. So if I'll get with you, you let me know. I know we had pros and cons, whether they're worth it. And half the time when you put up in the neighborhoods, they complain and you have to take them up because they hit them all the time. So I don't know exactly what on that particular street. It's going back towards the Keesler fence when they had the turnaround. And when they turn around, they come back out. They said they speeding a lot. So I'll sit with you after the meeting and talk about that. I had a couple of things from last week. I know Jerry had said about talking about the citizens coming to speak. Well, we have these forums for that purpose. And I don't care whether they're involved in a particular block or 2 blocks away from it. They have the right to come to the city council meeting and speak. And we accept them, and you listen to them, and you either agree with them, you don't agree with them, that's nothing to do with it. But you cannot stop citizens, say they can't come because they live too far away. When you're doing what they're dealing with right now at the short-term rentals, it's been 4 or 5 miles up and down Highway 90. So yes, they have the right because they feel like they threatened. And then when they come to the meetings and the planning commission, don't treat them right at all. So I just think that's something that you need to look at. The planning commission is just a board. We supposed to represent the cities. We take their taxpayers' money to provide services for them. And that's the name of that game. And that's what we do. All of us elected officials, that's our job. So, and I know, then Robert said something about when I called my sister up last week, that we could have a time limit on that. I don't know. People have done it all the time, talk 3-4 times longer than she talked. So I don't know where all of a sudden we're going to have a time limit on people speaking in their defense of their property. So I don't agree with that one at all. Let's see now. And the last thing, Mayor, you said you'd bring us a report about the 3% raise, how much money it would affect the city, what it would cost the city to give all the employees 3%. Did you you said you're going to have something prepared for this?
Yeah, I do. I think we talked a little bit about the 1.75 being the 3%. But again, I'm not prepared to give you a recommendation on that. I think the question was, what it would take to do that. Again, trying to counter that expense with some sort of revenue, and that's an issue that's still pending. And again, we got, hopefully by January we can come to a conclusion and bring you up to date. At least our first meeting in December.
Yeah.
With how you want to handle those kinds of things. If it's recommended. At this point, I can't say yay or nay. Either way, we need to be competitive in every aspect of our employees and the jobs that they do. But also, whereas the funding need to be identified and be solid. We've looked at some of the gaming revenues, some of these other revenues like sales tax, and we're holding our own with pretty aggressive revenue picture. And so again, I'm not in a position to say we need to do this or not do this.
Yeah. Okay, well, we just need to look at it pretty hard because we have to keep the employees we have, and we can't afford to lose anybody. We have enough employees working, but yet we need to look at with the inflation, everything that's going on in the United States. I mean, it's something to me that we just need to put on the table and try to put something in effect in January the best we can. That's why I was hoping that you just, anything you can add to it. I know last week you said about $1.7 million to have a 3% increase just for all the employees. So I just have to balance it out because sometimes it's overtime that we probably do better just increasing some pays instead of having so much money tied up in overtime too. So sometimes it works both ways. So I'd appreciate something for the first week in December.
We'll give some recommendation.
All right. Thank you.
Ms. Newman? Mr. Deming?
I just want to tell you thank you. I got some good news from Isabel that we're going to take bids on some stuff for the dog park and the lights. I'm glad we're moving forward with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Is that all you have?
Mr. Mayor, I caught the segment on WLOX last night about the frontage road and the relation to the Coon Street ramp, and I know that we opened a capital project on the Coon Street ramp, I think in 1920, so it's
ready to bid.
It's been a minute, as we said.
We're just about ready to bid. And again,
And I think the last action we took on that was to approve an amended application in this past September. So I'm thinking the reason for not reconstructing the frontage road, I believe you mentioned in that segment, was the parking and so forth. That was one aspect of it. Could you give us some idea of the 20,000-foot view for the Coon Street ramp related to the Orr O'Keefe Museum, roughly, and that section of frontage road there?
and the infrastructure as it will go, we could have pushed harder for Coon Street, but there was some things infrastructure-wise that need to go under the highway and be completed as far as water. And Chrissy, you kind of listening to me? But we're ready to bid. We got that whole project. The subsurface work has been completed. At the same time, we're making a decision to save about $1 million, not reconstructing the surface road, which has minimal functionality, and offset it with about 150 extra parking places that can be used for Orr O'Keefe, for any other things, as well as couple the parking on Highway 90 to go along with our boardwalk. So it was the time we kind of drug a little bit of the Coon Street to like infrastructure complete. We still have about 6 weeks in order to give any case whether we go forward with doing the turning lane versus a complete resurfacing and base of the subsurface work that's already been done. But we do have a significant amount of parking that is available in those dead spaces that if we would just replace the service road, we wouldn't have the ability to do that. We have to ask permission. It would be on MDOT right away at this point, but it's been done. Peter can can tell you what the precedent was set about not using, because there was a service road that came all the way from Myrtle Street to past Coon Street. So that's what we're analyzing. Again, we have not asked MDOT's permission. Christie's been doing the drafting of the ask of MDOT so we could go forward with it. But it would save us some time and some money as far as the infrastructure project of not rebuilding the road. But I think a long-term benefit would be that additional parking is significant.
Well, the money that would be saved by not reconstructing that frontage road, it can't be used on any other project. It can't be used, I don't think, to offset anything. It would just save whatever it would cost to reconstruct that road.
Again, the overall cost of $355 million now would be reduced by that amount, not rebuilding. But it still save us. Walt's back here, about $500,000. About $500,000.
Okay. But we really couldn't use that for anything else. Okay. Christie, question. So if that's in MDOT's right of way or whatever, would they, I guess, vacate that to the city? Would that be the proper term?
Peter will tell you on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, what they did 1 block to the east in front of Harrah's is they basically abandoned the right to have a roadway there. They kept their property line, but they kept it for landscaping and pedestrian walkway. So they kept their property rights, but they abandoned the use as a roadway.
Okay, so they would do something similar in this instance.
Yeah, the precedent is there.
Okay, so then if that was that frontage right of way, for lack of a better term, was
Abandoned.
Abandoned. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that word. Was abandoned by MDOT. That would just be green space, or you'd mentioned parking. Would some of that then be used for parking? Again, what is?
Well, I think my co-counsel here, but I think they would want to see what the overall plan would look like, and just like they did with the Harris project. So I think they would be open to additional parking, something right across from the Schooner Pier with the boat shows that are going on. That'd be a benefit. I think that they would envision as well.
When might we get a look at a site plan, if we want to call it that, or when do you expect some sort of item to be on the council agenda related to that?
Well, it'll be after our inquiries at MDOT, and there's a number of MDOT things that we're looking, especially the Pops Ferry extension. So we're going to bring that up to them when we have a meeting tomorrow, don't we, 10, with regard to MDOT interaction.
I think you've got the number of additional potential spaces. You've got that.
We got that laid out. Yeah, and that was on the program. But we have copies of that right now. A draft of what additional parking would be to replace that.
So what's driving this is the need for additional parking in that area, more or less. Would that be accurate?
More or less, but also not having to spend another $500,000 in burning time to complete that to a road that really is not functional. Another part that Chrissy and I talked about, there's a number of not needed power poles that impact that from Oak Street all the way to the old Lady Luck service and substations or whatever you want to call it. From an aesthetic standpoint, the ability to two properties that would kind of be impacted, of course, the Toledino as well as the Harris property from Oak Street towards Coon Street, that has the potential to save some trees. by relocating
Or you're
things.
pulling out the stops now, good thinking.
Trim some trees and aesthetics, the ability to kind of clean that up and have a really fine shot without the impact of some pretty significant concrete poles that were needed in the past and not needed now.
Do we know what the original purpose of that frontage road was? I mean, that was, George might know, but I don't want to give him
1960s.
another 30 seconds.
When was the service road? 1961, 62?
That's when they did. That's when
And they had a
did.
number
They-
of service stations and a number of houses, at least from Oak Street that way.
Right, and then they had the 2 lanes going to the bridge. It used to be
Right.
1 lane.
Yeah,
So they changed all that when they built the new bridge and everything.
right.
And that went all the way. But the thing, my problem is, how you going to get all this parking if you take the road away?
Well, again, we'll give you a picture of it, but it's very easily done. There's a lot of green space in between the service road and the edge of Highway 90, the westbound lane of Highway 90. That's primarily where it would go.
And that's all MDOT property.
So, yeah,
Right, because MDOT owns the front of the yacht club. That's why they wouldn't
Yeah.
let us park on all that.
yeah. I
I
can,
don't understand taking away the road, how that's going to accomplish.
well, let
that's
me walk
something
him
else.
off. Let me walk in my office and I'll give you a picture of it if you want while you do that. Turn to my attorney. I'll go show. Get a
I mean, we can move on with the agenda, and we can get that later.
yeah, after the meeting.
Not a problem.
Yeah.
We'll look
I
at
trust
it.
you.
Thank you very much.
Does that conclude your report?
That concludes my comments. Thank you, Christie, for your non-comments.
Mr. Glavine?
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I, as well as the mayor, I'd like to welcome the student council to our meeting today. Got to run into y'all at McElroy's today, and I see Miss Sarah Parks back there, Sarah Beth Parks. I visited her classroom 2 or 3 times in the past, and it's very enlightful. So welcome to our meeting today. All right, so getting into some things. I noticed that the baseball, the Sportsplex and the baseball fields, they're moving over to the bigger fields. Looks like they're a way ahead of schedule. Anybody give a report on that? How far above schedule are we on the enhancement at A.J. Holloway Sportsplex? Just a brief one. I'm getting some, yeah, sure. All right, do you have any idea how far ahead of schedule we are on that project? Okay. All right, that's good. More to follow later. I may have one more thing for you, Director. On the tennis lights, I've been following that a little bit, and I've noticed on some of the reports that there's an RFP that's either been accepted or there's a mid-December date. What is that relevant for the tennis courts?
Yeah, so the tennis courts, the RFP is out to bid. Basically what that is asking for lighting contractors or lighting companies, because sports lighting companies will come in and actually install and provide all the lights. So that is opening, I think it's December 10th. We'll receive the RFPs for that. So hopefully we can get that under construction after the first of the year.
So we're looking at sometime first quarter, possibly completing that lighting project and have new lights, LED lights, by the way,
Yeah.
at our tennis courts.
Correct.
That's wonderful. Great news. Thank you, Director. On dredging, I did a little story yesterday with WLOX. There's a lot of interest in those dredging projects. Been speaking with the mayor. We still have some hurdles. This is just a commentary period that these letters have went out to the residents that live around the Sunrise and Brazier Bayou area. Once if an application is approved, Mayor, the next step is funding through Go Mesa and Tideland money. Is that correct? So we'll have to line that up at some point in time. Watershed plan, Director, for the Highway 67 area, when we advertised all those lots for potential rezoning, has that been implemented yet, or is it in the beginning stages?
It's still in the beginning stages, but that hadn't really been a priority, but we will push it back to the top and make sure we get that done for you.
Okay, I'm getting some
Yeah.
calls on that plan too. You may already been aware of it. Just a couple items, FYI, Mayor. The tree committee representative for Ward 6 has tendered her resignation, so we're going to have to find a replacement for Christine Davis. And the last thing I have on my notes here, Chief, the speed table assessment for the Reunion Place. I noticed there's something that's being monitoring. I don't know if that's monitoring traffic or I've never seen it before. It doesn't look like your typical monitoring system. Is that part of the process that's been put in that neighborhood that you're aware of?
That's not something that we're using.
Okay.
I'll have to find out who's doing that, but I'm sure it's going to be some kind of traffic study.
Okay. Is there any update though on the speed table assessment yet, or we have had time to get to it?
And I'll have an answer for you after the next traffic committee
Okay.
meeting.
All right. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. I have a couple of things really quick. Eagle Point Park, they've started the process of putting in the electrical for the lighting. And so I believe that's one of the final things that we have on that. That's good to see. Wool Market Christmas Parade is on December the 9th at 2 o'clock. December the 9th at 2 p.m. Anyone on the council, mayor, that want to ride, I need to know as soon as possible so that I can get a number to the Corvette Club of how many people are planning to be a part of that. They've started the construction after about 120 years of redoing the roundabouts. MDOT has in Wool Market, and so that's I know there'll be some pains during the process of that, but that's a very welcome thing. They're gonna, from my understanding and looking at the plans, it's gonna look sort of like the roundabout on Highway 15, and so you won't have, Chief, as many wrecks there, hopefully. So they've started that, but with that being said, I know that we have the medical plaza coming up on the agenda in the next couple of meetings. Is that correct, Jerry? With them in the process of doing that, and you know, I know I'm leaving in a few meetings, but I encourage the city to try to, as soon as possible, go forward with those plans to widen Shriners going north for that plaza, because that would just open that area up, and we would see a lot of development, commercial development come in there to that area south of Wool Market Road on Shriners Boulevard. So at that, both of those, Jerry, go ahead.
Phase 1 is supposed to start, phase 1 of the medical is supposed to start with a year at a time.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I know that I had a couple people call me, and I think it's already going out to bid for the contractors on that. And that's going to be a huge addition, not just to our community, but to the city, and to do that.
I think we did Overstreet. I think
Yeah, he has a preliminary.
1.95. I think to do the 4-lane as well as a shortcut road.
Yeah, I think if you tie in that area of Wool Market Road, Shortcut Road, and all that, I'm not sure exactly, but
1.9 or 1.59.
yeah, I just think that it would be a catalyst for for that area growing right there, and bring other things. So with that. The last thing that I have, Chief, is I got a lot of calls this weekend. Duck season opened up, and I guess they were guns a-blazing on the backside of Eagle Point. And so I got a lot of calls on that. So anything that we can do to help, at the boat launches or whatever, anything we can do.
Over the years, we've worked out a few techniques, and we'll employ those. And
Okay,
we
yeah.
actually already have somebody out there. But
Okay, good deal. Yeah, and I know that we put it in the B News and everything, and so a lot of people got it. But there's a lot of people, I guess, that are under the assumption that because it was allowed before, it's grandfathered in, that you can still shoot a gun in the city limits if you have a certain amount of property and things like that. And so,
I don't know how we can make it any clearer.
Yeah.
And I know some of them actually get into to the city limits and may not realize that they're in the city limits. And I know that does take place.
okay, and I know that it's going to be impossible to stop completely, but anything that we can do to help out.
Sure.
All right, appreciate it. And that's all I have for.
Chief, can I just
Yeah, go ahead.
touch base on the same thing? If the season started, I know we get these calls for Sunkist in that area every year. Well, not last year. And Michael Cavanaugh and some other residents complimented us and thanked us for allowing them to sleep peacefully in those neighborhoods. So whatever you guys were doing in that area to stop the duck hunting, please do it again this year.
Will do.
Thank you, sir.
All righty.
All right. And that concludes my report. We'll now move
Wait a
to.
minute, an extra question.
Yes, sir.
On your parade, is it the same route it was before?
Yes, sir. So lineup will start at 1 o'clock, and we'll have somebody, if you want to park where we line up at the end, that can run you back to your
Yeah,
vehicle.
we'll take a red Corvette. I'll ride that.
Red Corvette? Okay.
And one other thing, going back to what Fofo was saying, when they changed the road into service drive on the point, in 1962 is when they put the brand new bridge in. The old bridge used to go across the bay. In 1962, when they opened, that changed Highway 90 and the service drive back then. But that was the purpose of service drive back then, because they only had one lane going to the old bridge. You had to turn at Myrtle. And they built a brand new bridge in 62 is when they opened that. In case you'd like to know that. A little history for y'all. Remember that.
And Mayor, one other thing is on that Shriners Boulevard, anything I can do, maybe I can talk to Connie before and see, because I know they've already set their budget for the year, but if there's any funding there, that's a big deal to be able to do that. So anything we can do there to
I
help.
think that we'll probably use multiple funding sources, if we can tap MDOT and just some improvements they're doing along the interstate. And
Yeah, and they're about to go into session, so I think maybe during legislative, if we go up that day, we can, sit down with our representatives and then maybe the governor and see about getting some funding to help out with that.
Yeah.
So, okay. That concludes council reports. We'll now move to the public agenda. We'll have a total allotted time of 45 minutes for citizens' comments. If you want to make a comment, you can come forward. And whenever you come forward, please sign in at the sheet on the table, state your name and address. And you will have 3 minutes. When the bell rings, your time is up, and we'll move to the next person. I will start on my left side of the room and your right side of the room. My left side, your right side. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Please sign in and state your name and address.
I'm Sonia Murray, 407 Oaklawn Place, Biloxi. I'm here for the Friends of the Library, and I would like to thank you for the reopening of the West Biloxi Library, for the very wonderful renovation which has been done. We are no longer going to have an air conditioner which goes out in the summer to the misery of all concerned. This library is so valuable to so many people in the area, not just for checking out books and videos and the use of the computers for many people who don't have computers in their home or whose computers go south at some time, but for the children. There are more children enrolled in the Biloxi Summer Reading Program than for any other city on the Gulf Coast. This program is so very valuable because a great many parents both work and work full-time, work 8 hours a day, and some of them have 2 jobs. So they don't have time to spend time teaching their children to read, reading to their children. The children are getting this as toddlers, as small children at the library. It is extremely valuable. Bless you all for reopening it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, anyone else that would like to speak? Anyone else that would like to speak? All right, if there's no one else in the room, that will conclude citizens' comments. We'll now move. Oh, we have one more. Please come forward, sign in, and state your name and address.
Mayor Gillich, City Council members, thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak here today. I bring a situation to you where we are living in Second Ward, and the Division Street area where our child catches the bus in the morning has increasingly had more homeless people in that area. I would ask the city to increase patrols during the morning time and the afternoon time as these children are getting on the bus or getting off the bus. Not all the time are we as parents able to pick up our children from the bus stop, and we rely on them to walk down. There's been a couple of instances where we've had homeless people that are breaking into vacant homes on the Fayard Street area, and it is creating a problem. So before this situation increasingly gets worse, we're asking the city council and the chief to be able to increase those patrols to ensure the safety of our children and that neighborhood. And that is what I am asking for the city council to do for us today. I appreciate your time and thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else in the room that would like to speak? Anyone else in the room that would like to speak? If not, that concludes citizens' comments. We'll now move to our policy agenda. Ordinance A.
Ordinance to amend the Biloxi Land Development Ordinance pertaining to recreational vehicle parks.
This was moved by Mr. Glavin. Comments?
Well, I know we've kind of batted this one around a little bit. Can we have an explanation of what this ordinance really means and what the primary changes are? Sure. When this went through to the Planning Commission, the change they made was that if you have a residential lot, to allow for a permit, if you get the special event permit, that they would, and let that go through the committee as needed, and basically no distinction between residential lots for RVs as opposed to residential and commercial. Is there any increased cost to the individual RV owners that use the lot? Not at this point, but if this goes into effect, that's what we would kind of be wanting to discuss with the council, that if that's going to be allowed, that there should be some sort of if somebody's not staying in an RV lot or not filling up a hotel, that there should be some sort of a fee involved for renting the lot out. Okay. Maybe on a square footage basis, or just so they don't just pack the lots again. Would those funds be used for a specific purpose, or would it be just a general fund? Probably general fund, but it could definitely be used to offset the overtime that we incur. Okay, so to clarify, this simply takes a residential lot, they apply for a permit because there's a special event coming to town, and it just informs us that they're going to be using it for X amount of spaces for RVs or what have you. Right. Okay. Thank you.
All right, we'll start down here and just work our way. Mr. Lawrence, any questions or comments?
Yeah, I had, I know we're doing all this, go after the bad event we had in the city. And how's that going to help this here, just charging somebody to rent the land out? What were you accomplishing there? For what? Because you're going to charge them, you're going to wind up charging them a fee. You're going to charge the landowner probably $200-300, whatever it is. Then next week, they're going to charge RV people more money to park there. So what are we accomplishing?
Well, what we're going to accomplish, I think, Jerry, we counted 720 or so campers, people sleeping in an RV or a camper or whatever, that will not be staying in a hotel room or having, some benefit of a nightly fee. If there was a fee, it was $5, $25 for the whole week or something like that, that would offset the $170,000 for cruising that we pay. So if that's a little bit of offset of that expense, that's the thing, that's the idea behind it. Whether it's, for the 7 days of the event or just a tag, and it's done a lot of places. Let me relate, I visited purely for business purposes Las Vegas last week, and we attended the Formula One race. Every cab ride in Las Vegas was charged an additional $15 for that event. So that, it kind of puts things in perspective on the use of our roads and facilities and the offset of the things we do, public safety, would be a little bit, not unreasonable, an idea that we could, do the arithmetic, defer some of the expense that we're going to incur by doing nothing as far as revenue of those particular vehicles and campers.
Well, I mean, you want to do the math. I mean, they had 1,000 tickets was written this year and cruising at $200 a pop. That's 200,000. So that money.
No, it's collected or not collected. That's another.
It doesn't
question.
matter. It's the same thing. We do
Anyway.
numbers. That's $200,000.
Well,
we go against.
Our position is it's not unreasonable to look at that opportunity.
And I don't want anything to affect this cruising. And these little things will take, in time, will affect.
Not just cruising, every special event.
No, that's cruising is the main one. The rest, nobody else runs something like that, other than cruising. So, I mean, that's who you're affecting right there. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Newman? Mr. Deming?
Now, as I read through these, correct me if I'm wrong, this only applies to people renting the space. So it's only for commercial enterprises, right? It's not for the people that have an uncle that owns land and they bring their RV over and park on his land and watch Mardi Gras parades or cruising the coast or scraping the coast or whatever it is. If it's not for a commercial enterprise, then it doesn't apply to this ordinance, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Ms. Dale?
So my good friend, out-of-state owner, property owner, and his parcels are zoned residential on Highway 90. My good friend, Mr. Glavin, who lives in Missouri, and I get with him and say, we can make a few bucks. I'll let RV owners come stay for a week on this lot, and we'll charge them $500 a week. So if we've got 2,500, that's 10 grand. And Mr. Glavin, I'll keep $1,000 of that, and I'll send the other 9,000 to you. And he says that's a great deal. So he's the property owner. Does he have to do anything under this amended ordinance?
It's
Commercial, it's an enterprise.
It's tied to the property owner registering and filing for the permit.
Okay, so the property owner has a responsibility.
Yes.
Here, okay.
Property owner would pay a fee of $250 in order to use that property for the commercial venue, which is what this would be. You know, whether they have anything more than two or more RVs is considered a park. And in this case, it would be a temporary park. So they would pay the $250 and they would have to provide a letter if there's someone else involved, like the example that you gave, Dr. Tisdale. If there's out-of-state owner and then there's someone on the ground that's going to oversee or manage what's going on, the promoter would have to have a letter from the owner saying that they have permission to use that property.
Okay, would Mr. Glavin then, as a property owner, or me if I'm his agent on site, would either of us have to get anything from the state of Mississippi, any kind of permit, license? Nothing.
Sir, not for this.
Nothing.
No, sir.
How about insurance?
Insurance is kind of a personal thing. It's not something that we would get involved in, but I would hope that if they're going to put RVs on there and there's always the chance that there might be a fire or something, that they would have insurance that would cover something like that.
But if we were permitting it, would it open up any liability on our part if somebody got harmed and we allowed the use of that residential property to be quasi-commercial?
That would be a legal question.
We'd have to look at that. It depends what they're doing. If it's just an RV sitting in a lot, it's been totally unregulated for the last 20 years. So,
one thing that the language does state is that if they are going to use it for an RV park, that it has to meet all the standards that a permanent park would meet as far as the distance between the RVs and a adequate place for people to park in there. There's some dimensions in there that spell that out.
And that's for also emergency vehicles or first responders to kind of navigate around,
Yes, sir.
the property.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Would I need to provide, as the agent on site, would I need to provide a site plan of who's going to park where on
Yes,
this
sir.
property for this event?
We would have to see that, yes, sir.
Okay, so a site plan's required. Then you said that this temporary park would have to meet all the requirements, basically, of a regular RV park. So does that apply to underground plumbing, water, utilities?
No, sir, not in that case, because we always get requests for people to put up temporary power poles out there. But we know that if we ever allow that to happen, that power pole will never go away. So everyone that's out there has to operate off of a generator, and they're supposed to be self-contained.
Okay. And if I understood correctly from a previous comment, if my good buddy Mr. Deming has one of those RVs and he drives it up onto Mr. Glavin's property, and I've got included where he's parking in the site plan. Right now, earlier it was stated that there's no cost to Mr. Deming at this point, is what I heard, but that in the future it may be that Mr. Deming has to have some sort of decal or permit or something on his vehicle. So there might be an additional cost to him in some form or fashion as the owner of one of those RVs.
That's correct.
Okay, so just to summarize, I'd need for the residential property, a permit, a special event permit, a $250, which is $250, a letter from the property owner. There's no insurance requirement at the moment, and I'd have to meet the RV park requirements, and I'd have to have a site plan.
Yes, sir.
That pretty much wraps up if it's a residential property. But if it's a commercial property, is there anything that changes?
Mm-mm. It's the same
thing.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. So for those folks who may be worried out there in the rest of the world, it's going to cost you $250 for whoever has the property to get a special event permit, which would be for the duration of that particular special event, and then some paperwork, and that's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Glavin, do you have anything else?
No.
I've got a follow-up. Just, Mr. Glavin brings up a good point about insurance. Now, Peter and Jerry, you said that they're going to be required to meet certain standards and provide a site plan. Does that create a duty to inspect by the city?
Good question. Yes.
Yeah.
We would have to take a look at what was designed and what was approved, and then how they actually set it up out there. And if it's not set up the way that it was approved on the site plan, then we'd have to get them to relocate.
So if that does require a duty to inspect,
We'd have sufficient lead time to do that, because something like this, they'd have to apply, I think, 120 days before.
Yeah.
And it allows them to say, this is your plan, and this is your spots, and this is where you can have them. And then they're just like any other vendor at that point. We've approved the spot.
So
we're gonna have to do a lot of publicizing between now and the next major event, to make sure that property owners and RV owners are all aware of the new rules that are going into place, because this is a major change in what they're used to.
So the reason why I bring this up is to bring to your attention that I think if there is a duty to inspect, that does open up potential liability. If some scumbag lawyer like myself comes along and there's an injury on that property, I would name the city of Biloxi as one of the defendants in an action. And so if there is that duty to inspect, I think there is some liability, as the aforementioned Kenny Glavin stated. And
there might be, if we don't do our job correctly, and that's the case for any business, any new business they open, any new building they open, we have that duty to inspect.
do we have a waiver or an indemnity?
We got
clause?
sovereign immunity. We'll cover a lot of these sort of, did you inspect or not? So it's more of a whole legal seminar of what's exempted and what's not. But doing something like this, I don't think will put any greater burden on us than what we're already doing every day.
Okay, well, thank you.
Jerry, how many lots are we talking about?
I don't have a number right offhand, Mr. Lawrence. I could get that information and provide it to you. But, I mean, it would be everything from Bridge to DeBees.
So whether it's a big lot or small lot, it's going to be 250 no matter what.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's the first thing. And Robert's right. When you sue somebody, you're going to sue to the money line. The money line's going to run to the city. So they'll definitely be involved in the suit. They know, that's. So we talking about, say, 30 or 40 lots, maybe?
Oh, no, there's more than that.
I'm just saying, so you're talking about that time, $250? You're not talking about any money. You ain't talking about that much money. 40 times $250 ain't much of 50. Ain't that much money. That's $12,500.
Yeah, where the $250 comes from is that is the vendor fee. That's the fee that's on the books right now. If someone is a vendor, and in this case, someone is actually using that property for a purpose or for a use, then the books allow us to charge $250 for it. Now, if y'all want to raise that, I'm sure the administration would be glad
Another
to talk.
problem, you said they have to go by the regular RV parks. You're going to lose a lot of those RVs in there because they just stack them in there.
Yeah.
Now, if they have to set them up 10, 15 feet apart, you're going to lose probably 20, 25% of those RVs. So where are they going to go? We're going to run them out of the city of Biloxi? So what are we accomplishing there?
Yeah.
I don't see much in anything. Just my opinion. Thank you.
All right, I've got some questions. Just so I understand this correctly, if I have an empty lot on the beach, let's just say the Broadwater property, for instance, that's, I don't know, 600, 800 foot of beachfront, and I want people, our people are going to come and park their RVs there for cruising the coast. That property is owned by Roy Anderson and Cotton 4. And most of those, I know because I go down there, most of those people do not pay. So Roy or Cotton are going to have to come down to the city if there's more than 2 RVs on that piece of property and get a permit for $250, and that's for the whole 9 days or 8 days of cruising the coast, correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
Okay. And then they have to do a layout of exactly how that's going to be when they have no clue how that's going to be laid out, because what happens, like I said, from experience, is people pull their RVs into the lot and Joe's over here and they're like, oh, I'm going to go park by Joe. Cotton and Roy have no clue. Cotton and Roy aren't even there. They just let people park on their property. That's one problem. Second issue, you have this piece of property right down here on Main Street, right on the corner, right across from the filling station. Property owner basically doesn't care if people park there. They don't give them permission. They don't tell them they can't. They just go and park there, and they don't say anything about it. They don't care, but they're not going to get involved in it. They're not making any money on it or anything like that. That's your second scenario. Third is I own a house on the beach, and like Dr. Tisdale was saying, instead of renting this out or making money, my brother and my sister want to bring their RV, and my mom and my dad want to bring their RV, and I want to pull mine from behind the house and go park it closer down to the beach because my house is 200 foot off the road. I have to get a permit to do that because it's more than 2, correct?
That's correct, yes, sir. I couldn't hear you.
Even if it's not commercial, so if they're not renting, it seems to say that it's exempt if they're not paying to stay there.
The assumption is that they're making money off of it. It has to be. I mean, otherwise everybody will tell us we're just doing this for our good friends.
Yeah, but the reality is, though, like I'm saying, I just pointed out 3 instances where they're not making money. I know that there are instances where they are, but this guy that has this piece of property right here on Main Street isn't even involved in this. He just basically tells the people, if you want to park there, you can. That's on you. I don't care. And I don't know who owns this property, but I know people that park here all the time. And so my fear is what you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up having all these holes in your events because some of these property owners aren't going to deal with this situation because they're not even involved. You know, Dr. Tisdale said, you know, somebody living in Missouri, that guy's not going to come down here and file a deal and pay $250. So that's one issue I have with this. I'm not saying that it's a bad idea, but I think it needs to be restructured. Second is, how are you going to charge somebody $250 for the Saturday Neptune parade, but then charge somebody $250 for 9 days? There needs to be a daily charge, not a $250 charge based on the event. If you're going to charge, it needs to, it's not fair for somebody to pay $250 for 4 hours for Neptune or for our Gulf Coast Carnival, but pay $250 Saturday through Sunday. That doesn't make sense.
I agree. We would just have to.
It needs to be a daily. It needs to be a daily charge if there is. Thirdly, and not to take shots at anybody, but I don't believe for a second that we can regulate this as far as go out and inspect and see how we can't even keep up with who has a short-term rental and who doesn't have a short-term rental in the city. How are we going to go out and make sure and measure and make sure every one of these motorhomes are a certain distance and it's exactly like the plan that this guy wrote up is? It's just there's a lot of holes in this particular ordinance, in my opinion. And I believe that it needs to be reworked. I believe that the charge, if we are going to charge, needs to be daily. I don't believe that if I live on the beach and own a piece of property and my family wants to come put their RVs out there for a couple of days, or if I want to put my RV, a case in point is this past Cruising the Coast in front of the finish line, there were multiple RVs parked there and nobody stayed in them. They were used to use the restroom and to watch football games and to use the refrigerators and things like that. And at the end of the night, we locked the RVs up, cleaned up the lot and left and came back the next day. Those RVs were just put there for the convenience of while people were there. Nobody stayed in them. They were just for the convenience of while people were there during the day and into the evening while they were watching Cruising. Then they went home. I went home at the end of the night, went to bed, and came back the next day. And so I think what this ordinance does is it puts everybody into the same box, and that's not the case. And I think that we need to look at some of these situations, and I understand the intent. I do understand the intent, but you don't want to run people off. We're talking about Cruising the Coast, and we're talking about, but what about Mardi Gras? You're going to have holes in Mardi Gras where these lots are not going to be able to be used because of this ordinance. And Mardi Gras is much more compacted than Cruising the Coast is. And so I think that we need to look at this maybe even from an event by event basis. St. Patrick's Day, how long does that parade last? An hour, 2 hours?
How long?
I'm just saying, so how is it fair to charge them $250 to come park an RV for this short event, but somebody from Cruising that's here for 9 days is getting the same deal? I think that, I just think there's a lot of holes in this. And I think that this particular one, I don't have a problem with the other two really. Okay. But this particular ordinance, I think, has some holes in it that needs to be addressed.
Okay.
Nathan, may I? Jerry, I know you said that it's just going to be assumed. I think that if we assume, then we have to take language out of the ordinance, right? And you just have to say it either is or it isn't. In Article 24-4-3D10, subsection C, recreational vehicles, it says any parcel or tract of land wherein 2 or more recreational vehicles are occupied for dwelling or sleeping purposes by rent or lease shall be considered a recreational vehicle, recreational park. I think that if we can't put that in there and then assume somebody is. I think we'd have to have some substantial evidence that they are violating this ordinance. We can't just assume they're violating the
And
ordinance.
see, there would be no way for us to know one way or the other, or they're leasing it. I mean, are we going to get that deep into it to where we ask them to provide proof that it's either being leased or it's just their goodwill to allow people on there? There's really no way for us to monitor that and enforce it.
That's where I think we struggle, with this ordinance. That's all I have, Nathan.
But I think if somebody has 10 RVs on a piece of property and said, these are all my relatives, then fine, we'll have to deal with that. We'll get them to sign an affidavit that they're all their relatives. I mean, but these are extreme examples when you're looking at 95% of what's going on is just pure rental. And I agree, we're going to have to tweak some things. And I think the charges, we couldn't really put any charges on there until this got on the books in the first place. So I think the charges definitely need to be looked at.
Okay, so my question is this: and my fear is not so much cruising the coast, but Mardi Gras, like I said, is a much more compacted event. Neptune and Carnival, Gulf Coast. So these guys are rolling through, and you have, like I said, these lots where nobody that owns these lots are involved in the process of this, and they're not going to get involved. So are we just going to have these big gaps in our parades because of this ordinance? How are we going to regulate when a guy, and I keep using this one lot, but there's multiple. Let's use Machado Patano. They let people come and park in there for the parade, but they're not charging people because it's right on the parade route. And so how do we, it's just, in my opinion, it's going to be very hard especially for these businesses or property owners, that they're not going to come in. And so are we just going to say, nope, nobody can even park on this property with an RV or a motorhome because the owner that lives in California, they gave you permission to, they're not charging you or anything like that, but this owner didn't come into the planning committee or to the code office and fill out a layout of how 25 campers are going to be on this acre lot over here, that he has no clue how it's going to be prior to the event until they get there that day. And it may be a several day process of people coming in and leaving, and it looked different 2 days later than it did 2 days before.
Well, you're jumping from, like at Machado Patano, I think they may have a camper there or not. I don't know. I'll take your word for it. They have one. But now you're talking about an acre somewhere else where they have 10 RVs. Those are different situations. I do know the lot on Main Street, they called me last week to say they were trying to use that for themselves, and all the cruisers came in and parked there. And they couldn't, it was just cars, not RVs, but they couldn't do anything about it. Because, they thought they said, well, somebody just thought it was okay for them to park there because they'd done it before. So, yeah, I mean, it's basically chaos. It's totally unregulated. And this is the first step of trying to regulate it.
So I guess what I want is an answer on an empty lot that somebody, let's just say, lives in California and just lets people park there. How are you just going to say, you know what, he didn't come in and fill this out, you can't park here? Or Roy Anderson, for instance. Roy's not going to come down here, and you know that. And Cotton's not going to come down and fill that. That's one of the biggest lots on the beach that people park at. They're not going to come down and do that. So are you just going to say, you know what, Roy, no, you can't park your camper there. You didn't come in and fill this out?
I would think that's exactly what we'd have to do, which leads me back to how are we going to educate the public so that the property owners, at least here locally, are aware of what they have to do. And then regionally, because you get people, almost nationally, you get people from all over the United States here. Then how do we get the word, how do we educate the public with the understanding that, if you come to park your RV where you have in the past and that person doesn't have a permit, that, no, you can't park here. It's not, it really isn't business as usual. This first year will be the most difficult. But I heard site plan earlier, and I'm thinking, well, as a property owner, if something happens on my property and I don't know about it, am I going to be sued? I would suspect you would be. So it would be better to know what we have in that, from that perspective, than not know. And the fact that you've got logistics that the police department have to figure out based on where folks are. The fire department, police department need to have some idea of what's where. Anyway, but I see the challenges that
There's some
friend Mr.
spots on
Barrett
Highway
said.
90 that traditionally just stripe off their property to make sure that nobody parks on it. We've seen that, they'll tape it off. A couple of the ways that we've talked about in the department, how are we going to get the word out about this is, of course, B News, we'd use public affairs as much as possible, but then maybe even send individual letters to the property owners up and down Highway 90, to notify them well in advance that this is a new ordinance, and maybe even attach a copy of the ordinance to it with a descriptive letter of how it would work.
I don't know, I'm kind of like what Nathan said. You talking about WC4? I mean, he lets the homeless stay there. He don't care about that either. He lets them stay. So how you going to do anything to him? He probably got the longest strip of land. That's 262 acres in the city of Biloxi. That property. He got more beachfront property than anybody. And he's not going to charge anybody. He's not coming down and do a site plan. He's not going to do that.
But not only that, he doesn't know. That's what I'm saying. I mean, people that he is connected to just pull their RV up in there. I was with the Carters, and they had an RV, and 3 or 4, they said, yeah, y'all come on down. 3 or 4 more rolled up in there, and they parked in a little area on that property. Some of them's directly on the beach. Some of them's a couple of layers back. But I mean, you're talking, it's going to be nearly impossible for those guys, even if they were prepared, to put a site plan in place, because they don't know who's coming and who's not coming. And there's no.
But shouldn't it be their responsibility? If I'm Mr. Glavin's agent, shouldn't I know who's coming and where they're going to be? I mean, that's all. I'm just to plead. If I'm the property owner, I don't know, don't care, I don't want to know about it. Then
Well, have you ever driven by that piece of property at Cruising? There may be 100 RVs out there.
No, exactly. I understand. I do.
I just think that it's a nearly impossible task, especially on those large pieces of properties, to put together a site plan. I just don't see a way to do it and it be accurate and effective.
Let me get a word in.
Okay, Mr. Glavin.
I know we're spending a lot of time on this, and it needs the time again that we dedicate to these issues. We're taking what we're attempting to do is take an unregulated parcel of properties or parcels of property, and we're trying to regulate it. And that it becomes a problem because once we get involved, government gets involved in regulating the use of the property, then as I mentioned earlier, I think it elevates the liability. And then, I agree with Nathan as well. It's going to be hard to, monitor who's staying 1 day, 2 days, checked out a day early. That becomes, kind of problematic. Sometimes maybe it's better as we work through all these issues and spend all this time debating it, take a step back, and maybe this isn't the right step at this time until we figure out a lot of the dots that are not connected right now. We got a good thing going with this. I think from a law enforcement standpoint, Chief Miller always has the authority if there's a risk to the public and there's a critical mass of gathering that could have a negative effect, you always have the authority to step in and make sure that the public safety is first. So as we delve into this more and more, it's becoming more and more difficult for me I'm trying to find a way to support this, but it's becoming more and more difficult as we come at this from different angles. And that's my 2 cents.
I have one final question. Chief Miller, for spring break, how many RVs were on the beach? Or Jerry, either one?
720.
For spring break?
No, not spring break.
So we wouldn't have a count. We didn't take a count.
Were there a lot of RVs or?
There were not a lot of RVs.
All right, that's all I have. All right, does anyone have any other questions, suggestions?
Just a couple of thoughts I'll throw out there. Maybe we reworked it, maybe table it, rework this, and if it, I'd be happy to serve with whoever's looking at rework at this, maybe a couple of council representatives just sit in. You guys, whoever those representatives were, we get our suggestions to them, sit around the table, tweak this, see what we can come up with, take another shot at it. I hate for us just to turn it down and then nothing's done and we have another major event roll through. I think we all agree we're trying to get our arms around this, and we understand at some point we got to start and we have to do something, but we're not quite there to start yet. So just a thought, if we're going to table it to look at reworking it, and we want to have a couple of council members in the room as part of the discussion, might be a good thought.
But the feedback, if you don't mind me intervening, the feedback would be very helpful if we could get something in writing as to what the issues are. I mean, this has been difficult to put together for all of us, and we didn't expect that everything would be foolproof from the beginning. But if we could just get some feedback, something in writing, with some ideas. And do all 3 of these have to pass together since they're land use, or can they?
4C could be, 4C is independent, dealing with special events. The other 2 are kind of connected.
And I'm not trying to be difficult. I just see a lot of holes in this, and I understand the idea of what we're trying to accomplish. But I think with all these, even going from event to event, like I've pointed out, you have one event cruising that's 9-10 days. Some people are here, and then some events people's here for a couple of hours, a few hours, a day at the most. And so I just don't think that the same thing should be applied to those people for a few hours as someone as 10 days. So I agree with Dr. Tisdale. I think, and I know that we've went round and round on these. We've got the first 3 approved. So I believe that everyone here wants to do the right thing and get these on the books. But I believe that if we're going to get them on the books, they need to be right when we do it. And knowing that we're still going to have to make some adjustments. But on this one, there's going to have to be a lot of adjustments, in my opinion, because you have so many different scenarios, and I don't think that you can just put all those scenarios in one box.
Mr. President, I'd like to move that we table items A and B.
Subject to call?
Subject to call.
Okay, I have a motion. And before we go forward, our group from Biloxi High has to leave. They just met, so want to thank y'all again for coming, and we'll give y'all a minute to leave. Thank y'all so much for being here today.
We saw a citizen bring a complaint, and they were able to see that the laws that are made aren't willy-nilly. So I think they got a lot out of 4A.
Thank y'all so much for being here today.
Need a second?
Well, wait for me to get out the room just so well. Yeah. Yeah. No. Okay, so we have a motion to table. Do I have a second?
Did you say A and B?
Well, they said that you can't pass B without, you can't pass B without having A. Is that correct, Peter?
They're connected enough. Why don't we just do them one at a time, though?
So just table one at a time. Okay.
So Carrie won't get on me.
So
we're going to table 4A, subject to call. I think that was on the table. You can do both. You can do both?
Okay.
Need a second for
Okay,
that.
we need a second. Anyone want to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion to table
Discussion.
4A and 4B. Is there any discussion?
The only comment is, did we want to,
Let's put a time, I think we need to put a time limit on it because that doesn't just let it sit. That's just my personal opinion.
that's fine. Did you want to include in that verbiage or in the motion that you want a couple of members of the council to be included? I don't have to be one of those. I'm just thinking.
that's fine.
It would be.
If you want a time frame, I'll amend my motion 30 days.
Okay, so we have a motion to table for 30 days maximum. We have a second and to sit down and rework that. We have a second by Mr. Lawrence. Is there any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
That was 30 days max.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we could bring it up December 19th.
Anytime between now and 30 days if we sit down and the sooner the better, but I just think that there's some big holes in this.
Okay.
6-0.
Put it on your Christmas list.
All right. We'll now move to, and just for the record, our last meeting of this year is the 19th. So we're really, if we're going to try to fit that in.
January 2nd.
Yeah, by January 2nd would be the latest, but if we're going to try to fit it in before then, it would be one of the next 3 weeks. Okay, so we'll now move to item C.
Ordinance to amend the Biloxi Land Development Ordinance pertaining to special events.
Have a motion? Oh, I'm sorry, this has already been moved. Mr. Glavin?
Yep. I don't have, this is kind of a little easier one, so I don't really have anything additional to add to this item.
All right, I don't have anything either. Any other discussion?
Yeah. Go ahead, Robert.
Mr. Deming?
Give me a moment. Let me pull it back up. 4C, it's under events to happen no more than monthly. I think it's referring to residential properties. Let me see if I can get my exemptions on the grounds of a private residence. Now it mentions provided such events are held no more frequently than monthly. That means once a month, right? And how do we?
Tell me I think that's already existing, but tell me the
Well, it formerly said
paragraph.
It formerly said weekly. It's section 2 exemptions and subsection A.
Okay.
Right, and so what this says here is these are exempt as long as they happen no more than monthly, right?
Yeah, there's a couple of changes in there. Number one, the original language said special events, which opened the door for a lot of different things there. So what we've done is clarify special events, cross that out, and it's private, non-commercial events that people are having at their homes, just to make sure that we do have people that sometimes make a habit out of having very regular parties there. So what this would do is prohibit that from happening, in a residential neighborhood.
So the one concern I have is just that monthly word is because I have a lot of people over for Halloween. Then I have a lot of people over for Thanksgiving. Then I have a lot of people over for Hanukkah, Christmas, whatever. And then I have a lot of people over for New Year's Eve, right? So that's 4 big events at my house in 2 months. So I would violate this. I would no longer be exempt, and I would have to file for a special event to have a holiday party at my house. Is that what this means?
Well, one of the things that it's trying to do is to keep the residential character of the neighborhood, that if somebody's going to have more than that, then they're actually operating a business where it goes beyond the scope of a home occupation, and that they might need to have a different zoning, in order to accomplish that. So, but I mean, the ordinance already says weekly there. And
weekly is fine because there's no more major holidays within 1 week except for maybe Christmas and New Year's Eve, but that's still 6 days apart, I believe. So I think weekly is satisfactory to me because it does allow people to not feel like they're violating or have to come down and pay a fee and a special event to have that time period of events, or even in the beginning of the year when you have Martin Luther King Day and different events. that happen quite frequently, and people celebrate these events, right? And so they get caught up in their house becoming a commercial enterprise because they're having family gatherings to celebrate what we traditionally call holidays here in the United States and in Biloxi, Mississippi. And so that would be my biggest concern with this, is that we are restricting families from celebrating holidays within the same home.
Maybe the language could be clarified a little bit to say per calendar month or something like that, since there's usually just, one holiday to the month. It would separate them the right way so that monthly could be more specific.
I think that works for the few examples I gave, but I haven't looked at the calendar.
I was trying to cover you on that. So.
No, that works on those few examples. I don't know what the rest of the calendar looks like and how it would work with that, but I would be more satisfied if it said something like that. I liked the weekly because the weekly gave people the opportunity to celebrate certain things, especially when you have multiple kids in a household and those holidays come up, and then graduation for kids. And then now, for some reason, and I don't condone anyone for doing it, I never did, but I don't celebrate graduations for every year of school, right? But some families do. And so you have award ceremonies for every semester or quarter. We celebrate way too much in the United States, which makes this difficult. But I just want to make sure we're not boxing people in, and the city can't use this in an adverse way. And of course, I don't think the chief or his staff would, nor would you or your enforcers. But we won't be here forever, and the next generations that carry the torch of public service will have to deal with it.
Normally we wouldn't know anything about it unless somebody filed a complaint, about loud music or something like that, parking or overcrowding.
Well, I'm going to move to amend this to change the word monthly to calendar month, as recommended by the Director of Community Development.
Held no more frequently than once a calendar month, and do not hamper.
Okay, so we have a motion to change the language.
So what are you accomplishing in doing that? What does that zero down? What does that do to anniversaries? Whatever.
It doesn't help, right? So it doesn't help all of that, but it does separate it. So, especially in my neighborhood, there's every house you can see by the yard, they celebrate every one of these events, and there's tons of cars parked everywhere. And so I want to prevent the malicious use of an ordinance against these neighborhoods and families after we're gone, right? We have to, this legacy is our legacy now. And I don't want to give the standard bearers the opportunity to misuse an ordinance against a family or a household or a community that they just don't like for whatever reason. And that's all purely speculative, but it's possible. And so I am just helping Jerry and the mayor and the council rectify that one scenario that I referenced. I can't fix everything. I don't think they can fix everything, but I think that, like Jerry said, it's only going to be a problem when somebody complains. And so I'm hoping that just...
One of the things we found out over the years, it's very difficult to write a one-size-fits-all ordinance for the city. We're such a diverse city, and we're broken up geographically. And, things that seem acceptable down on the point, might not fit in so well at Wool Market. So the difficulty we have is trying to write something that would work in all.
Call for the question on the amendment.
Did we get a second on the
We have a
ordinance?
motion to change the language from
monthly to calendar
to
month.
one event per calendar month.
Yeah, calendar.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Deming, a second by Mr. Tisdale. Any other discussion? All right, if not, I'll call for the question. All in favor of the amendment? 6-0. Okay, so if there's no other discussion, I'll call for the question. There is other.
I just did have one last thing.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm trying to solve everything. I can't. The food truck portion, when you get down to 4C, it says that it's got to be 6 feet away from a sidewalk.
60 feet.
60 feet away from a sidewalk. Does that include on private property, for example, like at the Edgewater Mall, when food trucks set up for when all the Corvettes are there, they can't be there. They're going to have to be all the way deep into the parking lot instead of near the edge.
It would have to be 60 feet back, and the purpose for that is to keep the crowd away from blocking traffic on Highway 90. This is one of the reasons the police department specifically wanted that in there, is to make sure that the booths were set back far enough, the mobile food trucks were set back far enough to where the people could be there without being in harm's way and creating a traffic jam on Highway 90.
Well, even if the food truck was turned to where you approach it away from the street, right? So the generators and the whatever things are on the backside where people don't go, they just approach this way.
I'd let the chief answer that about the problems they've had before, but even if they're turned sideways, I would think it would still come.
Yeah, that is one of the key issues that we have during big events, is that vendors will set up too close to the sidewalk, whether they're facing any direction. There's always going to be a crowd around them, depending on what they're selling and what they're vending there. So all we're asking is that we push them back away from the roadway, significant amount of area between them and the roadway, so that we don't have people spilling out into the roadway. And also, when they're that close to the road, you have people that are driving that are not paying attention because they're watching the people that are there vending, especially during a spring break and groups like that. There's a whole lot of not paying attention to the roadway. And we feel like if we get them further back off the road, that some of that inattention will dissipate.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
So I understand that we're trying to accomplish because of events, but there are areas that people set up where there aren't a sidewalk. Would the language be the edge of the road? Would that be a better?
It says roadway.
It says roadway. It doesn't say sidewalk or roadway. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I also have a question. Previously, we passed or added language in an ordinance that you had to be further away from restaurants. Would that apply in this scenario? If you're setting up a food truck, would you have to be the required distance from a restaurant? Yeah. So that applies in this case if they're near a restaurant. Okay, thank you.
Last, the time for permitting, it says like 14 days. They would have to reapply every 14 days.
Special event permits, the length of the special event permit is only 14 days.
Okay, but not every food truck is tied to a special event. This is only for food trucks that are tied to special events.
So they'll have their regular business license. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jerry. They'll have their business license, but if there's a special event, they'll have to have a special event license just for that period of time.
Okay, that's what I was.
I hope I answered that.
You answered it exactly as I hoped. Thank you.
A question, Chief, is this strictly food trucks? Like Mardi Gras, we got all them buggies up and down the street, we got all these flags.
No, it's vendors. I think we worded it, didn't we, to just be vendors, whether it's
all this Mardi Gras stuff, nobody can be on the Muse Street. You got to be 60 feet off the Muse Street. That ain't gonna work. You down here for Martin, they had them stacked on top of each other. I mean, where you gonna push them at? 60 feet back, right here, all along the parade route.
Roads are closed, so I wouldn't even think that would apply because these roads are closed. Correct?
So what?
I don't think that would apply because there's no traffic and the roads are closed.
Yeah. Wait a minute, you're not saying that. Now, all these vendors right here, just here by City Hall, on these days, right on the road, right off the road, sitting on the side of the sidewalk.
So could we change the language to say roadways that are in operation or something, that have traffic or something?
They had the one in the parking lot right there. Where they going to be at? They can't be here at all.
We can say that it doesn't apply to roads that are closed, or you can come the opposite direction, like you said.
Active roadways or something. Yeah. This applies to active roadways.
You know the hole you're talking about. I mean, it's the same thing. You can't. A lot of people make their living on these particular days, and right now you're running them up the street. I don't care. They sell the stuff, and they even shopping carts. They walk up and down the street, so they can't walk up and down the street either.
That's what we're saying. If we make the amendment saying for roadways that are open or active roadways, these roads are closed during Mardi Gras. And so...
Well, Highway 90 is closed half the time and cruising. So you're going to eliminate that too? You think about it. You can't get down Highway 90.
It's not closed, though.
It's pretty much shut down on one side. Right.
All right, I'll make a motion to amend the language to say on open roadways.
Be section G4C.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Okay. Any other discussion? Call for the question on the amendment. All in favor? All opposed? 5-1. Mr. Lawrence is in opposition. Okay. Mr. Deming, do you have any other discussion on this item?
No, thank you.
Ms. Newman? Mr. Lawrence?
It's just one thing. Who's going to control all this? And what is the fine if they don't do anything right? What are you going to do to them? Who's going to move them?
To ask them.
Who's going to go around and move all these people, all these events, every year, all year long? We have a lot of stuff in the city of Biloxi. Who's going to do all that? Nobody. I mean, you set rules that you can't follow. You don't have enough people to do that. We don't have enough policemen to handle the traffic. It's tough enough. Now, all of a sudden, somebody in code enforcement, they don't work on the weekends. I mean, who's going to do all that? Nobody. It's just, you pass the stuff that you can do. That's it.
All right, Mr. Tisdale.
You got to start somewhere. This is no different than a new school policy. You got to get the word out so that when the next school year starts, everybody's aware. You have a grace period, possibly, and then after that, you start enforcing what you approved. And there's just a big education piece here to the general public. We need to do a good job with that. Thank you.
Hey, Paul, we did that 20 years with the insurance. We still ain't got the word out. So how long is the grace period?
No, well, the key to all this, again, one of the keys to this is going to be enforcement. So if all these events are occurring on the weekend, and a lot of them do, then people have to work on the weekend that don't usually work on the weekend. So whether it's overtime or whether part of the whatever fees may be involved with these events and these permits are collected would help pay for that overtime. But yeah, you got to enforce it. If you're not going to enforce it, we shouldn't have it on the books. That's the way I look at it. Thank you.
Mr. Glavin, you have anything else? All right, any other discussion? Okay, I'll call for the question. All in favor? As amended. 5-0. Mr. Lawrence, or you're, okay. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, 5-1. Mr. Lawrence is opposed. We'll now move to the consent.
Can we do executive session now?
Yeah, we can.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. So we're now going to go into an executive session.
Oh.
So
Okay.
I need a motion and a second. All right, I'll make the motion.
George made it. You can second.
Okay. Mr. Lawrence moved and Councilmember Barrett seconded that the council go into a closed session for the purpose of examining the necessity to go into executive session to discuss prospective litigation against 3M DuPont. All in favor? All opposed? 5-1. Mr. Deming in opposition. I need another motion.
Should be the same first.
Okay. Okay. Councilmember Lawrence and Councilmember Barrett seconded that the council conclude the closed session and reconvene as an open meeting. All those in favor or against? All in favor? All opposed? 5-1. Mr. Deming in opposition. Councilman Lawrence moved and Councilmember Barrett seconded that the council go into executive session. All in favor? All opposed? 5-1. We'll now go into executive session.
Prescott, 149 Rossetti Street. He has asked for 60 days because of the road construction and all that's going there, and I would ask for 60 days.
days.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Lawrence, a second by Mr. Tisdale. All in favor? 5-0. Next item.
Item H, Silver Slate Group LLC, 632 Roy Street. This property is still in violation.
All right, is there anyone here on behalf or against Silver Slate Group LLC, 632 Roy Street? If not, this case is closed.
Item I, Wiggly's LLC, 285 Lemieux Street. That case has been resolved. Item J, Dean A. Wallaber, 6285 Kimbrough Boulevard. This property is still in violation.
All right, is there anyone here on behalf or opposed to Dean Wallaber? Okay.
My name is Paul Schlick Jr. It's my son that owns the property next door. He bought the house about 3 years ago, and we've been trying to get something done on that house, and it's now got to the point where he has trees laying on my son's roof. So we talked to code enforcement. They told us we can cut the trees down. I don't think I should be responsible cutting this guy's trees down. And I don't know if I'm opposed or for it. I want something to happen to the house, though. My understanding it's been vacant for 18 years.
So what happens if we close this case? The city will hire a contractor to take care of it and bill the taxes.
Very helpful. I just want to make sure that is the next step. I don't understand the process.
Okay. All right.
Is this home, what we discussed, is it going to be condemned or?
Okay. All right. There's no one here for this case is closed. We'll now move to the next item.
Thank you very much.
Item K, Deborah and Delina Lockhart, 275 Raynor Street. That case has been resolved. Item L, R&K Properties, Inc., 11489 Cedar Lake Road. This property is still in violation.
Did they do anything since the last extension?
No, sir.
Nothing.
And actually what's happening is the growth has gotten so bad that it's pushing the neighbor's fence.
Where's this at on Cedar Lake Road? I bet that's my word of yours.
We typically have a map in here. I'm sorry, I don't.
That's fine. I mean, we can do it. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf or against R&K Properties, 11489 Cedar Lake Road? Let me pull it up real quick. 11489. Okay, this is right up there by yeah, that's your ward. It's right there in the lawnmower shop. Yeah. Okay. This case is closed. It's the end of the routine agenda. We'll now move to, that's the end of code enforcements. We'll now move to routine agenda. I need a motion.
So move. Second.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Lawrence, a second by Mr. Tisdale. Mr. Lawrence?
Walt, latest update?
Good afternoon, council. Not much has changed since my last reporting, Councilman. We have 884,000. It's still in step 4 or 5. It's been there 8 days, and as I've said previously, it usually takes 12 to 15 days for it to reach the city accounts. And like I said, we should have over 950,000 coming in right behind that, if not a little bit more.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Is there any other discussion? Not, I'll call for the question. All in favor of routine agenda? I need a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Tisdale, a second by Mr. Lawrence. All in favor? 5-0.